Hello, in this video I'm going to show you how to add terrain and also how to add things like water and trees to your game environment in a 3D environment. So to get started, we'll create a new terrain object. So got to game object, 3D object, and then click on terrain. Okay, so you'll notice that in your assets you now have new terrain here. And you can actually zoom in and see it is actually right here. So I'm going to give this a new name. Just going to call it my terrain. Okay, which isn't too descriptive, but anyway, give that a name for your project. And I'm going to resize this terrain as well. So I'll just make it a little bit bigger. So go to the little cog there, and we'll just scroll down. And we'll change the terrain width from 500 to 1000 and also the length from 500 to 1000. Oops, just need to make sure I actually hit enter there or return. Okay, there we go. All right, so there we go. We've got a basic terrain there now. All right, but it doesn't actually have any color to it or any textures like grass or anything like that, and it's just completely flat at the moment. So this terrain, you can imagine that is the world in this game scene. So everything that occurs in the game we can have happening on this terrain. So there's a few buttons along here for terrain. First one is raise/lower terrain, and you can pick different brushes here. So there's like a soft edge round brush, there's a hard edge round brush, there's a few rougher brushes here, as well as some shapes like the star. Okay, you can also change the brush size and the opacity. Alright, so to add terrain or to increase or raise the terrain, you basically just click, and you can click and hold down to just basically paint terrain on. So the longer you hold down, the higher the terrain gets as well. So just move around here and just pan and zoom in a little bit. Might actually just move over this way a little bit. Okay, so we can just add some terrain here. So I'm just holding down the mouse button, or just clicking with the mouse button and holding it down where I want to raise the terrain. Okay, so you can create mountains and valleys with the terrain tool here. All right, now if you realize that you've put too much terrain in, or you've raised the terrain too much, you can lower it, and you can lower it by holding down Shift and then clicking with the mouse key just to lower the terrain wherever you click. Alright, so that's how to raise terrain and how to lower terrain. Raise terrain, you just click and just paint it on, and to lower the terrain you hold down Shift and click with the mouse. Okay, what we might do now is actually give this terrain some grass. So it's really just white terrain at the moment, nothing exciting there. So we need to actually add some textures to this terrain. So we can go up to Assets and then Import Package and then Environment. Okay. All right. Now we can just click on Import to import everything, and just give that a minute to import. But basically, you can also download a whole heap of packages as well, custom packages. So you can add custom packages which might have a different range of grasses and rock kind of textures and mud textures, sand, a range of different textures that you can use on your terrain. But if you download Unity and when you install it and you choose to include some of the example assets, then you should be able to just pick the environment asset package and import that. All right, which is what is happening now. So once this environment asset package has imported, we can go back to our terrain and we can add a texture and pick one of the ones that's been imported. Okay, here we go. So you can see now that there's a standard assets folder here as well. So if we go into standard assets, environment, I think there's a whole heap of terrain assets here. There we go. So we've got some new grasses and rock sort of patterns and mud and sand. Okay, so that's all there. All right, so to add a texture to this terrain, just simply click on the terrain or click on it in the hierarchy. And then we can go to, where are we? The paintbrush. So we can click on paintbrush, which is paint texture. We can click on edit textures and then add texture. All right, we want to click on select here in this little box here on the left, and then scroll down and you'll see all of the new textures that have been added from that asset package that we just imported. Okay, we don't want to use any of these ones here like grass fronds, okay, but we can use something like this sort of flat grass texture here, or the mud one, or the rocky one. I think there's a sand one in there as well. Yep, so what we'll do is we'll just start with this one here, grass hill. Double click on that and then click on add. Okay, and that's going to be our main texture in this environment. But we can go ahead and we can add some more textures just in the same way. Alright, so I'll add this rocky one as well. And then again, just edit textures, add texture, select, and then we might add this rocky one. And the last one we'll add, edit textures, add texture, select. Last one we'll add is the sand texture, which I think I just went past. Yep, there we go. And then add. Okay, so now, while you've got this paint texture tool selected, you can just click on different textures and then just paint it on just by clicking like that. Okay, just click on different parts of the terrain where you want to add this new texture. We can add some mud here at the top. On the side of these little hills here, we can have some mud. Might have some sand down the bottom. Or we could even make a bit of a path with sand, a bit of a road like that. But we'll undo that because that looks pretty bad. So you can, maybe lower the brush size, just change that a little bit, and you could have a bit of a path or a road going through there. Okay, so that's basically how to add textures. I'm just using the mouse here just to click in different spots. You can increase or decrease the brush size, opacity, and just pick different textures that you want to add. Okay, and we could spin around. We could do the same thing on this side. Just click. We want to add some mud on the side of these hills here. Maybe some rocks, a bit of a rock texture. Maybe just touch it up with a bit more grass there. So it's just a matter of playing around with the textures there. And you can, of course, get more textures there if you import some custom packages or make your own textures and import them. Okay. Just a bit more mud there. Bit of rock. Bit of grass there just on top. Alright, so that's a very basic kind of rough job of adding some textures there to the terrain. It's also a very rough terrain here that we have. Alright, so go back to here. This is a tool that we use to raise and lower terrain. Then we just click to raise, hold down shift and click to lower the terrain. We've also got paint height here, so we can hold down shift to sample a target height, like this little point here. And then when we click anywhere else, basically that's the maximum height that it will go to. Okay? So now we have a maximum height that we've sampled from over here, so we can't go over that height. But I might just undo that because that looks pretty bad. So that when we're using the paint height tool, we can sample a target height, and then everywhere else where we add terrain, it won't go over that height. Okay, we've also got smooth height here, so we can just smooth off these hills here. In fact, if I just raise, oops, if I just raise the terrain with one of these rougher patterns here, maybe this one here, you'll see what I mean. So when I go smooth height and pick this other smooth brush here, it's actually smoothing that off. Okay, so that looks pretty cool. Okay, so we've got raised lower terrain, we've got paint height, we've got smooth height, and then we've got paint texture. What we might do now is add some water. Okay, so if we go into the assets folder and then into standard assets and then environment and then water basic, we can go into prefabs and then we can just drag one of these water prefabs straight into our terrain here. So we might actually have a bit of a lake right in here. So I'll just drag that on there, zoom in. Okay, and we have just a little bit of water there. So we can click on water basic daytime here if we can't select it in the scene view. And what we can do is we can just resize this and move it just like we can any other object. So I might move it up a little bit and then resize it. Okay. All right. Maybe just move it a little bit as well. This way. All right. Now, there's our water. And it'll look a little bit better when the game is running, but we've got some water here. It's actually moving here in the scene view, but we've got some water. And so we've formed a little bit of a lake here in between, in this sort of valley here. But it kind of doesn't really look right there. So what we can actually do is we can go back to raise terrain. We might just increase the opacity there and just reduce the brush size. And we can just click there. And we could have even made that brush size a bit smaller, but basically we can just increase the terrain around there just to round it off a little bit. We could also maybe make a little bit of an island in the middle. Make the brush size even smaller. We could just have a little bit, just click there, and we've got a bit of an island there. Okay. And we might actually just shrink that island a little bit and maybe just pick a bit of a rougher brush. And there we go, just something like that. So just fiddle around with it a little bit until you're happy with what you've got. Yeah, that's basically how to add water to your terrain. So, you know, we could add a really big, large area of water out here, and then we could just increase the terrain around it to create a bit of a river. Okay, and there's a lot more here that we can do with the terrain. So we've got heaps of room there to work with. And so, you know, we could just go ahead and really build some mountains up here and some valleys, and you know, add some rocks and add some mud and sand. We could have a little bit of desert over here. We could have a river coming down here, and you know, a really big mountain range here. So, and maybe we could have some flat area around here, and some paths, and you know, maybe some houses and things, and that's where our character could kind of interact with the environment. So now what we can do is just add some extra detail, and that's with some trees. So what we'll do is I'll just add a bit more terrain here, and just fiddle around with that a little bit. Really quick rush job. Really does not look that great, but obviously you can spend a lot more time on it if you want to do that. All right, so we can add some trees now. So to add some trees, we can click on the tree icon here, and we can place some trees, but first we actually need some trees to use. So if we click on Edit Trees, and then Add Tree, and then click on this little circle icon here, we'll see all those trees that we imported before. So there's only a few in there. There's a palm tree, there's some conifers, and some broadleaf trees. So we might just grab some, add some conifer trees. So we'll double click on conifer, then click on Add, and we might add another couple of trees there as well. So just do that again. Add some broadleaf trees, click on Add, and then we'll add the palm tree as well. There we go. All right, so we'll select the conifer first, and you can fiddle around with the brush size and tree density here as well, the tree height, a few different settings there. And basically, if you just click, and you can also hold down and drag the mouse around, you can paint on trees just like we painted on terrain and textures earlier. So we could have a bit of a forest over here, and we could have a really thick forest just by holding the mouse down and clicking. All right, so I've got a bit of a forest of trees there. Or the alternative thing to do is click on Mass Place Trees. You can type in how many trees you want. Maybe we'll just have 1,000. And that will spread out a whole heap of trees across your terrain there. So, yeah. What we might actually do is add some other types of trees in there as well. All right, so we've got a mixture of trees there, and then over this side here, we've got a bit of a thick forest there as well. Okay, go again. We could mass place another 10,000 trees, and now we've got a really dense, populated forest there, trees. Might actually undo that because I think I've got way too many trees in there, and it's just actually altering the performance here of Unity. All right, now, when you add trees, you'll notice that Unity doesn't really put trees on the top of these peaks here. So where you've got really steep terrain, like cliffs here, it won't put trees there, which is pretty cool. But if you do find that it puts trees where you don't want them, then what you can do is you can just hold down Shift and click to remove the trees from those areas. So if you didn't want trees on the hills here, then you can just hold down Shift and click to get rid of them. All right, just like you do with adding terrain, you hold down Shift and you can decrease the terrain. All right, now if you find that when you're zooming in and out, or panning around or orbiting, if you find that it's really slow, what you can just do is double click on the object that you're zooming in and out of or panning across, and that will kind of focus on it, and then you can zoom in and pan again. It should be fast again. So if you ever find that navigating around becomes really slow, just double click on the object that you're working with. It will kind of zoom out and just fit it in the screen and focus on it, and then you can move back in and pan around it a lot easier. All right, I might just shift click that tree out. There we go. All right, now the other thing with trees is it hasn't really occurred here, but sometimes when you mass place trees, or just clicking across a big landscape and adding trees, you might find that it actually adds trees to the water. So if I just click in here, I can add some trees, but you can see that there's actually trees in the water there. So if you do mass place trees and you find that trees end up in the water, just go to the tree or place trees tool and shift click to get rid of them. Okay, so you can also go over here to the paint details, and you can click on edit details, and you can add a grass texture. So if you click on add grass texture, and then click on this little circle icon here, you can go down and find some grass textures, such as this one here, grass fronds. Click on add, and then you can paint on some grass texture. Now, you won't actually notice it until you zoom right in on it. So I've just clicked here to add some grass texture. It's actually quite thick there, so you might want to reduce that in the settings here, but you can add grass textures to your game environment but you won't actually really notice it until you're actually in that part of the game. So when I zoom out, just to improve performance, that texture disappears. Doesn't actually appear until I zoom in. I don't really like this texture anyway, so I'm going to undo that. Just hold down Command Z to go back. And I'm just going to leave it how it was, because I kind of like this flat grass texture here, and I think the game will perform a bit better in that way. So there we go. That's basically how to add and edit terrain in your game, and how to add water, and also how to add trees and textures to your terrains. Thanks for watching.